in this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Poonam does a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to the autumn series of AppCare Research Webinar. I'm Snehanshu. I teach at the Goa campus and also with AppCare. And we have our speaker from UNSW Sydney and CSIRO. Actually, he's with CSIRO and he works with people in UNSW and the cybersecurity CRC. Arindam is a senior research scientist at Data61 in Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization and a senior research fellow at Cybersecurity Cooperative Research Center. He is also a conjoint senior lecturer in the School of Computer Science and Engineering at UNSW Sydney. Arindam's research interests are in AI, cybersecurity, and machine learning. And he works on business and research problems of CSIRO and collaborates with faculty members of universities, both in Australia and abroad. His PhD is from the Computer Science Department from IIT Delhi, and he has over 14 years of industrial research experience in companies like Microsoft, Yahoo, and Novell. He has published academic papers in reputed conferences and journals and filed patents in various countries. He's a technical program member for several reputed conferences and technical reviewer for many renowned journals. He's also a senior member of both ACM and IEEE. So I welcome you, Arindam, and thank you very much for agreeing to give a talk. And over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Snehanshu, and also thanks to my friend Pritam. I can see him in the audience because I told Pritam first about that. So thank you for inviting me to give a talk in this AppCare research seminar. Good evening, everyone. So here it is 8:35 in Sydney. So, and it is, I think, good afternoon for you. So today I'll give a talk on VRank, which is a new algorithm to compute the influence of users and posts in online social networks. This is a joint work with my academic collaborators from University of New South Wales, Sydney, and University of Technology, Sydney. Okay, sorry. Okay, I think in Google Meet, you have to go to that. I cannot directly do it from here. I have to go to the application. Okay, so first, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land where I am sitting, the Gadigal people and their elders, past, present, and future. So here is today's agenda of today's talk. First, I will talk about the importance of ranking users and items in social network analysis. Then I'll talk about ranking in heterogeneous bipartite social networks. Next, I will discuss the VRank algorithm, its high-level ideas and the concepts. Then I'll discuss the convergence and rate of convergence of VRank. Then we'll study, visualize VRank in a different way as optimization of a certain regularization function, and we'll show that VRank is the optimum value of the regularization function. I'll also give a Bayesian explanation of VRank in terms of a probabilistic graphical model. Then, if time permits, I'll show a generalization of VRanks to heterogeneous n-partite network ranking, which we call GRank or generalized ranking. I'll then show some of the experimental results on some real-world datasets. And finally, I'll conclude the talk and summarize what we have done and give some directions for future research. Please feel free to ask any questions during the talk. You can interrupt me and you can ask me any question. I'll be happy to answer. So let's start. What is the problem in the ranking users and items in social networks? So ranking vertices and edges in a graph is a fundamental task in social network analysis. So an example can be vertices can represent people and edges can represent their relationship. For example, friendship. Now, assigning each vertex a particular ranking score can be used for many tasks, such as predicting the popularity of a certain vertex, then link prediction problem in social networks, the recommendation of and the both text and network structure can be used for this purpose. But for this talk, we'll focus on the network structure of a social network. So here are some existing works in ranking. So they mostly focus on homogeneous network. So they can be either unipartite or bipartite. So by homogeneous network, I mean the vertices are of the same type. So they don't distinguish between different types of networks. So one of the classic examples is the Google PageRank algorithm, which computes the influence of vertices as the stationary distribution of a random walk or equivalently a Markov chain. So it's of course one of the most seminal algorithm. Another seminal algorithm which came even before PageRank, it's called the Hits algorithm by John Kleinberg. It assigns each vertex two rows, hubs, and authority, hub and authority both, and then it computes the hub and authority score for each vertex. But in this case, the vertices are of all of the same type. There are other algorithms also which came after Hits and PageRank, for example, CoHits, BGER, BGRM, ByRank, and so on. So they either rely on intralinks, the user links in unipartite networks, or interlinks, the user item links in bipartite networks. Okay, so in real social networks, there are two categories of links. So the user and the user item link. And these two categories of links, they coexist and they form what is known as a heterogeneous bipartite network. Both types of links play important roles for ranking of vertices. So our contribution, we developed a new algorithm VRank for addressing the ranking problem on a heterogeneous bipartite network. Then we show that the algorithm eventually converges to the principal eigenvectors of certain matrices associated with the underlying graph. We also show not only it converges, but it also converges rapidly, and the speed of convergence depends on the second largest eigenvalue of some matrix. We study it under a regularization framework and show that the regularization function is strictly convex and it has only one global minimum. And this is precisely the solution given by our algorithm. We then generalize our bipartite graph ranking algorithm to rank vertices of a multiplex n-partite graph. So instead of bipartite, it's now n-partite, and we employ it for ranking two different types of real-world social networks. And finally, we do extensive experiments on real-world social network datasets and validate the effectiveness of our algorithm against the current state-of-the-art algorithms. So let me first start with the high-level idea for the VRank algorithm. So we formulate the vertex ranking problem in a very generic manner. We consider both the intra-type links within similar type of vertices and also the inter-type links across different types of vertices. And then we formulate an iterative solution to this problem. This iterative method of VRank captures the mutual reinforcement between the users and the items. And I'll, of course, show how it is doing the mutual reinforcement. The more links a user receives from other users, the greater influence that user obtains. And similarly, the more actions by a user on an item, the higher the ranking score the item will receive. The ranking score of the target item increases the user influence and vice versa. So here is the mathematical formulation. So first let me show a picture that will make it clear. Then I'll go to that. So here is the model of a heterogeneous bipartite network model. So here on one side you have a set of users, and the other side you have a set of items. So for this talk, I have taken an example of the Twitter social network. So you can see the U1, U2, UM are the users, and T1, T2, Tn are the tweets. So the edges here are directed edges. So for example, a user can do some action on a tweet. So suppose user UI does an action on a tweet TJ. So it can be either like the tweet, or it can comment on the tweet, or you can retweet that thing. So those kind of actions. And so I think in this example, I have shown one of the thing I like the solid edges, I think I have noticed for um, uh, comment, and the dotted edges are for like, but I mean you can do it in other ways. So this is from one set of edges, the inter edges that are going between user and item. In this case, the users and tweets. There are also another kind of edges which are between the users. So in case of a Twitter, so there is a directed edge between UI and UJ. If UI, the user UI follows the user UJ. Now, so there are two kind of networks. So edges. One is the inter edges which are going between users and tweets. There is another kind of users which are between another kind of edges which are between users. So note that there is no edges between the tweets on the other side, because I mean tweets don't follow each other, or tweets don't act on each other. So I mean typically the users are the one which can act on tweets. So, and but in a more general setting which we have considered, it is also possible that on the other side also between the TUIs there can be edges. Okay, but for Twitter that is not the case. So now let me go back to the mathematical model. So basically you have a set of M users. You want
can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, there is a tweet example. Can I also think of a symptometric network where authors and the articles that they author can also be represented using this kind of setting?
Yes, exactly. This is a very general setting. I mean, we have tried it on the Twitter network as well as the author. So their academic network, where like the on one side the user U1, U2, UM are the authors, and the other side these are the papers. So I'll show you that analysis of that. So now the thing is that in that case, between users, there can be like, if two users write a common paper, there can be a collaboration edge between them. But now on the other side, there will be citation edges between them. For example, if one paper cites another paper, then there can be citation edges between them. So so this is actually very general framework to capture all these kind of interactions. So I mean, as a running example, I have shown the example of a social network, and particularly Twitter, with directed edges. But the edges can be directed or undirected, and there can be inter edges and edges from both sides of the things also.
Right.
It can even be used in a online shopping site, for example, say Amazon or Flipkart, where you can have on one side you have the users who are buyers, and the other side you have the items which you are buying, and then you can also be thought of as a product user and product graph. So I mean, we have tried to model it as a very general framework.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So now we have a set of M users, U1 to UM, and a set of N tweets. Okay, T equal to T1 to Tn. Now we model the user tweet connections as a bipartite network. Just consider the graph induced on that U union T and the edges which are just going across them. Okay, so now this is like the graph U union T, and the edge set is E, where E is the set of edges between U and T. So this is just the edges that are going across between U and T. Okay. So an edge UI to TJ is present in the network G if user UI acts on tweet TG. Now this acts can be very different kind of act. For example, it can post some tweet, it can like some tweet or retweet or reply. So different kind of things can happen. So we call G the user tweet network. Similarly, we can model the user-user connections as a unipartite network H, where F is the UF, where F is the set of links between users in U. So now if you see that this is the set of the vertex set is U, and then there are edges between this UI and UJ, and this set of edges is the set of F, my set of F. Okay. So in a tweet network, for example, there is an arc from user UI to user UK network H if and only if UI follows UK. Okay, so this is in this particular type of social network, the directed edge captures the follower relationship. Okay, and H is called the user-user network. Now in this case, there is on the tweet side there is no network, but in other settings of the academic collaboration network, so there may be a citation between the two. So there will be another network, maybe I don't know, G, H, and I. So that will capture that part of that thing. Okay. So basically, you have one bipartite network which captures inter-edges, and there are one or two unipartite network which captures the edges which are within one side of the thing. So in general, in this case, it is like the heterogeneous bipartite network is U union T and U union F. It can be in general union T union F union, say maybe another set of edges K. So in this case, we have only two E and F, but it can be another set of edges on the right side also. So this is a very general framework. Just for this particular example I have taken, this is like that. So any questions? Okay. Now, we define the topological structure or the graph structure of this. Now we want to assign different type of edges in this network. Okay. Now for assigning the edges in G, we consider it as follows. So for an arbitrary edge Ui Tj in E, for example, these those edges going axle inter edges, we have we assign the weight Wg as the number of the actions that user UI takes on tweet Tj. So, for example, if it uh, likes and retweets something, it gets 2. Now, initially, when we designed, we actually kind of did a weighted distribution of these things, like maybe there is some weight alpha 1, alpha 2 for each of the like and this thing. But later, for simplicity, we just give them an equal importance. Of course, we could have given them different importance. Also, maybe comment is more important than like. But then there will be the question of how do we get the relative importance of those things. So there are these kind of issues are there. So for simplicity, then we decided we'll give them equal weight. But it is possible in this framework to give them different weights also. And the algorithms, the proofs and all these things, they will not change based on this weighting scheme. So now, so if we consider the corresponding matrix, so WG, that gives the weight matrix of the network G, which consists of these the weight matrix that are given. If you consider the adjacency matrix, the weightage that assigned to that. Now, for each user UI, we denote its weighted degree as di. So this is not just the degree. Degree is the number of sum of the number of edges that are incident on that. This is the sum of the weights of the edges incident on a particular vertex, which is known as the weighted degree, right? So then, so for each user, we have a weighted degree. And then we use the diagonal matrix du to denote the weighted degrees of all vertices, and its II, the diagonal component is exactly this weighted degree di. And similarly, for each tweet tj, we use dj to denote its weighted degree, and it's similar, very similar. And we have another diagonal matrix dt to capture that. So now that was inter-edges which are going between ui and tj. Now the intra-edges which are going between ui and uk. Now for an arbitrary edge ui uk, we define the weight as suppose wik, the weight between ui and uk, as the Jaccard coefficient of the NUI and NUK, which is basically the intersection by the union, where NUI is the set of all followers and followees of UI. So basically the neighborhood of UI. In this case, we are considering both the out neighbors and the in neighbors of this thing. So the total number of neighbors that are in that. So we consider both the out neighbors and in neighbors. Of course, you can ask the question that maybe we can give more importance to the out neighbors or in neighbors. So that is one possibility. But in this case, we consider them to be of equal importance, and then we have given this we have considered the set of total neighbors. It may be possible to just simply only followers or only followees. Those kind of things, of course, can be done. But that's how we have designed it. And the corresponding weight matrix of network H is the WH. And we note that because it's a Jaccard coefficient between the neighborhood of UI and UK, it is between 0 and 1. This the weight value. So WIKH is already normalized. Now we'll describe the design of VRAN. So Suppose UI and TJ are the influence codes of user I and tweet J. So with slight abuse of notation, I mean, of course, user UI and tweet TJ are the actual objects, but we are also denoting that influence code also by that, which is a slight abuse of notation. But we decided that it will be more intuitive to give it the same values. We could have, of course, given the name like S core S of UI and S of TJ, but that will become the equation to be even more cumbersome. So that's why we made it simple and we just kind of did a little abuse of notation. So, so because this is an iterative algorithm, so UIK and just so UIK and TJK are the influence codes of user I and tweet J in the kth iteration. So basically, this algorithm that I'll shortly describe, this will be done in rounds. So this will be the influence codes of user I and tweet J in the kth iteration. Now the important point is that the influence of a user is dependent on the influence of the tweets they act on and the influence of the users connected with them. For example, in this graph, if you see, the influence of user U1 will depend on the tweets, let's say T1 and TJ that it is doing, and the user that it is following or the users that are following it. Okay, and similarly for the other users. The influence of a tweet will be dependent on the influence of the users who act on it. Of course, it doesn't have any other tweets which will do anything on that. So it will only be dependent on the influence of the tweet that is acting on it. So therefore, the relative influence of users and tweets, they mutually reinforce each other. Okay, so you can see that so the scores of a user depend very much on the scores of the other users who are following or being followed, and the source of the tweets that it is acting on. So this suggests that we can develop an iterative influence propagation algorithm to compute the relative influence of users and tweets by doing a repeated improvement. So we start with the initial score and we do some iterative computation to improve that score, and we hope that it converges to a certain value, right? Of course, we'll try to prove that. So that is the basic idea. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, if not, let me go to the equations for that. So here is the equation for the iterative algorithm for influence propagation. Now this equation may look quite formidable and complex, and of course they are complex. That is, they are not very simple. But I try to explain this thing as as simply as possible. Of course, some of the things we did, of course, we did not come up with this equation or get it right in the like the first day. I mean, it took a lot of iterations to trial and error and also try to do the proof, and that's how we came up with this thing. But so the way these equations are designed, they have tightly or intimately related with the way the proof is being done. So if it was not designed that way, then the proofs will not go through. So you will give some intuitions based on our understanding, but also it has something to do also with the mathematical proof of that. So now the UI, the value for the k+1 iteration, the user score, they depend in some way the value of the tj's on the kth iteration, and only on those j for which there is something on that. So for example, if you look at those j that is on the other side of the thing, so you look at the so their weightage will be given by the wjij. Now note that if there is no age between a particular user and the tweet, then the corresponding w value will be weightage value will be 0, and that tweet has a no influence on that. So although it is summed over all j belonging to d, it only matters only for those j such that the ij age exists. Otherwise, if the age does not exist, the corresponding weightage will be 0, and so that the particular tweet will not have any impact on this the sum of these things. And also those edges which are connected to this UI, those tj's, for them the strength of those its influence will be dependent on this weightage of that particular graph. Now couple of things here. So first of all, So UI not and TJ not are the prior beliefs on the influence of user I and tweet J. So for example, so you may have some initial estimate or belief about what should be the importance code of this user UI and tweet TJ. Maybe you have a set of vectors, and in fact, it need not be correct also. It can be an approximate value of those things. You can start with those things, and then this iterative equation will try to repeatedly improve that. So alpha, beta, gamma are the hyperparameters to adjust the relative influence of the network structure and the prior beliefs. Okay, so we have given, so alpha, beta, and gamma are given relative weights of this each of these equations. So you give some importance to the prior belief or the initial values of that, and then you give some importance to the current value at the current iteration. Now, the most interesting part, of course, WG and this thing, they are giving it for a given tweet and the given users, it is giving the weightage. So why we are doing square root of DI and square root of DJ? Now, if if would have divided by DI and the DJ, that would have made some sense, because you have this PJ that is there. I mean, for the score of the tweet TJ, but now I am dividing it by square root of by DJ to doing some kind of a normalization, so that, I mean, if there is a value TJ and then there are DJ amount of score on there, so I want to distribute that in among these things. Now the square root part is of course not at all obvious. I mean, we could not find a qualitative like explanation for that, but this is important. Like when we do the proof of that, so it will come out that if we have that thing, then the algorithm has certain nice properties. So yeah, cannot really exactly give a qualitative explanation of why it should be square root, but at least you can have some qualitative understanding of why it can be divided by DI and DJ.
No, I have two questions. So
Yeah, sure.
the setting that you have for your iterates UI and TJ, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
does that setting, because the setting itself is convex, right? I mean, so does this setting help you establish the convergence of your algorithm to a fixed point? This particular setting, that beta plus gamma plus 1 minus beta minus gamma, because this is sort of a convex setting.
Yes.
Right? So
Right.
my question is, did you do this setting so that you ensure that the iterates eventually converge to a local minima?
Of course, it definitely it helps in proving the theorems. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And you had some other question?
The second question I have, the square root, does it have any role to play in the speed of convergence?
Yes, it has. It has actually role both in the convergence as well as the speed of convergence.
I see. Okay. All
yes.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So now, of course, this is a nice iterating algorithm. But so what? I mean, I have specified some rule, but you don't even know how good this algorithm is, whether this will converge or not. Even if it converges, is it a polynomial time or not, or how fast it will converge? And there are a lot of questions here, right? So let us see whether we can address these questions. So to do those things, first so this is a formulation in terms of this, in terms of each of these individual UIs and TJ values, but it is much more convenient if we formulate it in terms of vectors, matrices, basically in the language of linear algebra. Okay, then we'll be able to do a lot of technical machinery from linear algebra. So let's try to do that. So the thing is that in the matrix form, so let us suppose that the vectors U and the T, these are the scores of the users and the tweets. So these are basically the score vectors for users and tweets. And U of K and T of K, basically these vector score for users and tweets in the kth iteration. Okay, so these are corresponding terms in terms of vector space. Now, if you take this equation and then if you write these equations for the k plus 1 iteration, so this can be compactly written in this following form. Okay, now I am not reading out those things. It is on your screen. You can see that the important thing is that this SG and SH are the following matrices, which is defined in terms of the fundamental matrices du and dt that I defined earlier here. Okay, this is du and dt, and So and the weight matrices, the WG and WH. So SG and SH are defined in terms of these fundamental matrices. So our fundamental matrices were WG, WH, DU, and DT. Okay, and then SG and SH are defined in terms of those fundamental matrices. SGT is of course the transpose, and T naught and U naught are the query vectors, which is basically, or the starting vectors, which is the vectors this UI0 TZ0 for all users and tweets. Okay, so now we have a compact formulation of that. Okay, now so the thing is, the first thing is that suppose we define this matrix M naught in terms of these matrices, and Z naught is another vector. Then if we do some math, then we can show that the UK plus 1 can be written in terms of this matrix and some a series. Okay, of course I'm not going to the details of that, but you can do some calculations and find out that UK plus 1, UK plus 1 can be written in terms of U0 and T0 like this way. Okay, now I'll like to state some couple of theorems which are proved in the paper, and I'll not be able to go through them, but I'll give some ideas of how to why these are important. So the first thing is that the time complexity regarding this algorithm, the running time of each iteration of VRANKs is ordered m into m plus n, where m is the number of users and n is the number of tweets. So this shows that at least for each iterations of VRANK runs in polynomial time. Okay, so and it's polynomial in m and n, which is the number of users and tweets. And in our experiments, each iteration takes much less than 1 millisecond, which is quite fast. Of course, it depends on the size of the graph, the number of users and tweets, as well as your CPU and like your CPU and GPU and all this hardware configuration. But the kind of data sets and the server that we done, it took about 1 millisecond for a reasonably large graph. And we'll show what are those data sets, I mean, later in the experiment section. Okay, the next theorem is that the eigenvalues of m naught are in the range -1, 1. Okay, so see, this is m naught, this is the matrix that we consider. So the eigenvalues of m naught are in the range -1, 1. Again, I'm not able to go through the proofs of that because each of them will take quite some time, but I'm saying the key important lemmas and the theorems. Okay, now once you know that, so remember that each of the iteration is in polynomial time. So then we use one very important theorem of linear algebra, which is called Perron-Frobenius theorem, actually a variation of that. So that states that if S is a symmetric matrix, U naught is a vector not orthogonal to the principal eigenvector V of S, and lambda greater than 0 is the largest eigenvalue of S, then if you take this matrix vector U naught and you do S to the power k repeatedly, and in the limits of large k, where k tends to infinity actually, this is actually lambda times V, where lambda is the largest eigenvalue and V is the principal eigenvector. So this is an important theorem which will be which help us prove this convergence. So and using the other lemmas, so then we can prove that actually the VRANK converges to the stationary and unique solution U star and T star, which are the principal eigenvectors of these two matrices M naught and SGT N naught. The closed form solutions are given by, and not only we can show that the iterative algorithm converges, we could actually find out a closed form solution in terms of the fundamental matrices, and these are the solutions. Okay, now the thing is that good thing about is that we did it both way. We did it like we ran the iterative algorithms, and maybe after some iterations we found these U star and T stars from the iterative algorithm. We also computed these matrices and vectors and these things, and we actually found that. So of course, I mean, as the theorem says, it should come out to be the same. But some advantage of the iterative algorithm is that because for large graphs, these matrices, particularly there is inverses involved here, which may take quite a lot of time. Actually, some iterative algorithm actually gives faster things. So though this is a very nice theoretical result, in practice, the iterative algorithm actually gives you, converges to a solution much faster. Okay, so we have both the iterative solution as well as the closed form analytical expression. Okay, now so now we know that the VRANK converges to a certain values. The next question is that how fast it converges. So we show that, and also as Sudhanshu mentioned, this also has to do with the why we choose the square root of the way this is. Actually, both the convergence and the rate of convergence have depends on that. So the convergence rate of V rank depends on the absolute value of lambda, where lambda is the second largest eigenvalue of the matrix, this M naught. So note that interesting thing is that the convergence, in that case, it is kind of dependent on the largest eigenvalue of this thing, M naught, and the rate of convergence depends on the second largest eigenvalue of that matrix M naught, which is quite interesting. Uh, so both the largest and the second largest eigenvalue play important role for the convergence and the speed of convergence of VRAM. So in our experiments, the iterative solution usually converges in fewer than 50 iterations, which is quite efficient. Again, this all depends on the size of the graph, number of users and tweets, and their ages, how dense the graph is, and also the hardware, right? But for typical cases where we run, it turned out to be fewer than 50 iterations, which is quite fast. Okay, now, so far it is very nice. It has some nice theoretical properties, and experimental results we show later. But we did not stop here. We went further, and we tried to analyze this algorithm for two other different other perspective also. So the first additional perspective is based on under a regularization framework. So inspired by this network ranking based on regularization theory, we constructed a regularization framework for VRANK. So basically we have this we have formulated a regularization function, and then we show that VRANK, if we optimize this regularization function, VRANK is actually gives the optimum solution of that, and it's probably optimal. So I'll go through that. So we formulated regularization function RU of t in terms of this thing, where this theta, delta, and eta are the regularization parameters to combine different components. So you have this Tj square root of a, you have this thing, and then also this Tj naught and UH naught. So now, so I'd like to give some intuition about this function. Again, this is a complex function. So the first two terms of the regularization function enforces the smoothness constraints. Okay, if you look at the first two terms, like there is three terms here, right? So now they measure the variation of the ranking function on age Eij on network G and age Eik on network H. So recall that, so that age Eij was, suppose there is an arbitrary user UI and an arbitrary tweet Tj, so the age is Eij, and on the network G, that is the interages, and on network H, if an arbitrary user UI follows the arbitrary user UK, then there is a EIK. So these two terms measure the variation of the ranking function on the age UIJ in G and EIK in H. If two vertices are strongly connected, but they exhibit a large difference in their scores, then the magnitude of the variation will be large. And conversely, if it is small, then the magnitude of this variation will be small. And the third and fourth term is the fitting constant for the query vectors T naught and U naught. So, for example, so how far? So this Tj is how far away from the Tj naught, and then we take the square of that thing to measure this, if there is a like positive or negative. So we square them to measure out how far it will be, and it's like in terms of some kind of least square you can think. And delta and eta are the parameters that are given to those particular things. Okay, so give different weights to that. So these are smoothness constants, the first two, and third is the fitting constant. Now, rather third and the fourth. You should have written it maybe in different lines, but anyway. Now we show that VRANK is the optimum solution for this regularization function RUT. So how do we do that? So first we compute the first order derivatives del R, del UI, and del R, del Tj, and set them to 0. Let me see how much time I have. Okay. So now if you compute the first order derivatives, so these are the expressions that we get, and we set them to 0. We find that the solutions UI and Tj comes out to be in this way. Okay. Now this exactly recovers the iterative equations for UI k plus 1 and Tj k plus 1. If you plug in this appropriate value of the delta, eta, and theta in terms of alpha, beta, and gamma, so for some particular assignment of these values, VRank is actually iterating precisely towards optimizing the regularization function RUT. Okay, so that is very good so far. Now, but the question is this really the global minimum? So I have computed the first order derivative, right? Now for a continuous and differentiable function fx, if the first order derivative at a point x0 is 0, then x0 is a stationary point of f. Now it can be either a local maximum, a local minimum, a rising point of inflection, or a falling point of inflection. So there are 4 cases, right? So the first 2 are known as the local extrema, and the last 2 are known as the stationary points, which are not local extrema. These are not also known as saddle point or minimax points. Now the question is, VRank is it correctly computing the global minimum? To further understand these questions, so we talk about the notion of strict convexity and unique global minimum of VRank. So we show that the regularization function RUT is strictly convex, and it has only one global minimum, which is exactly the solution given by VRank. Now, how do we prove that? So first, if you have a continuous and twice differentiable function, it is strictly convex and has a unique global minimum if and only if its Hessian matrix is positive definite. So Hessian matrix is similar to the second order derivative, except that you want to formulate a matrix based on that, and I'll show what is that matrix. So basically, we compute the second order partial derivatives of RUT and prove that its Hessian matrix is positive definite. And what is a positive definite matrix? So a matrix M is positive definite if you take an arbitrary non-zero vector and then you compose x transpose M of x, then it should be strictly greater than 0, and that is called a positive definite matrix. Now the thing is, we have to show that it's strictly convex, and for strictly convex it requires that H is positive definite. If it was just convex, it would have been good enough for H to be positive semi-definite. Okay, where it would have been x transpose mx greater than or equal to 0. Now let's see how H behaves. So now H is this particular matrix in terms of the second derivative, like del square or del uy square and things like that, the 4 terms. So when you compute that, you found it to be this particular expression. Now note that D is a diagonal matrix and its kth entry dkk is the weighted degree of the kth vertex. And B is also a diagonal matrix, and its kth entry also depends on this. Now this entry L I minus D minus half this thing, this is exactly the symmetry normalized Laplacian matrix of the network. Now, by spectral graph theory, if you know a little bit of spectral graph theory, one of the fundamental theorems says that this Laplacian matrix is actually positive semi-definite. And B is positive definite because it is a diagonal matrix and its diagonal entries are all positive. So now this Hessian matrix is 2 times L plus B. L is positive semi-definite and B is positive definite. So L plus B is positive definite. And then and that's how we know that AC is positive definite, and so this function R is strictly convex. Okay, so and it has only global minimum, and as we saw, VRank is exactly the solution, right? So that is about the regularization framework of that. So we also try to give a Bayesian explanation for this thing. So here is a Bayesian explanation. So now let us first go to a diagram to make it clear. So we construct a probabilistic graphical model representation of VRank. Here WG and WH are the weight matrices, and TJ UI are these scores, and TJ naught and UI naught are the initial query vectors. So we assume that these query factors T naught and U naught are the observations, and these are generated by the latent factors T and U, which are the distributions serving as the importance scores of these vertices. And the weight matrices WG and WH, they form the prior for generating the latent factors. Okay. Now the goal is to infer the latent factors T and U that generate the observation T naught and U naught. Now one of the ways to we can do that is by doing a maximum a posteriori estimation of this, and that is given by, so we compute the probability of generating the vector u and t, given condition on the fact that u naught and t naught and the weight wg and wh, and this will be very clear um, from this probabilistic graphical model. Okay, and we want to find out that because it's a maximum a posteriori estimate, we want to find out that u and that t, those vectors which maximizes that particular probability, and we want to take the argmax, meaning we want to recover those particular u and t. Okay, so by if you do the Bayes rule and the conditional independence, then I'm not again going to this. So finally, you will find that the if you take the logarithm of that, you will find this turns out to be this argmax of this plus this and this. Now, suppose we put a certain value assigned to these probability values. So we assign pre ut to be this, p t naught given t to be this, and u naught given to be this, and these are the normalization constants. Then we can find that the minimizing the regularization function is equivalent to maximizing the posterior probability of generating the query vector. So this shows the equivalence between the ranking process of the proposed algorithm, that is VRANK, and a Bayesian network. So basically what we did was we mapped the ranking problem to a probabilistic graphical model, allowing the extension of our algorithm in a probabilistic way, which is more flexible and adaptable for different applications. Now, suppose there are some additional prior knowledge or context for the vertices, we can model them as priors for P and U and use these distributions. Also, aside from the maximum a posteriori estimate, we can use other inference techniques for inferring the ranking scores, such as variational inference and Markov chain Monte Carlo sampling. So these are like very well-known techniques for doing this kind of inference, right? So that can also be plugged in here. I don't know how much time I have. Just let me see. Okay, I don't have a lot of time. So in the interest of this time, I don't know whether I should go about that the G-rank algorithm, so which is basically a generalization to heterogeneous n-partite graph ranking. So in this case, in our setting, we had this bipartite kind of thing where we have two sides. In a n-partite graph ranking, you have n sides, and we are able to generalize this V-rank algorithm to the n-partite graph ranking. So you will have, so for example, I can give you one, say, three-partite thing could be like you have the in a academic collaboration setting, you have one side to be the authors, another side to be the papers, another side to be the venues. So the authors publish papers in conferences or journals, right? So these are the three sides of the network, and typically that is also kind of mutually reinforcing. So like if an author publishes a good paper in a good venue, then they are kind of mutually reinforcing each other. Typically, you will see the good authors publish good papers in good venues, and so that also kind of helps in propagation of this course. But in the interest of time, I'm not going into the details of that. So basically, we generalize this VRANK to n-partite networks also, and we call the corresponding resulting algorithm to be GRANK, and the details are in the paper. So basically, we also apply this GRANK in the setting of the bipartite network also and see how it performs. So now let me go to some of the experimental results, experiments and the results. First, let me describe. The data sets that are associated with these networks. So we did it 5 data sets in 2 types of networks. So the first is the Twitter online social network, which is kind of the running example. And we also did on A minor, which is basically an academic collaboration network. So basically, this consists of the authors and papers. Okay. So the Twitter dataset that we used are called fake news net. So basically, this is for a fake news detection benchmark dataset. So this dataset consists social engagements. So for example, the tweet IDs of tweets sharing the news and the user information. For example, user followers ID and followees IDs in tweeters on those particular news items. In RNet Minor, which is an academic collaboration network, we have this information like paper information, citation, author information, and author collaboration. So, so here is like a snapshot of these data sets. So you have these 4 data sets from the Twitter from Fake News Net. So basically, we call they are named as PDL, P Fake, GDL, and G Fake. And we have Ardent Miner. So the number of items and the number of users are shown here, as also the number of user item, user, and item which are there. So as you can see that many of these graphs are quite big. For example, the Ardent Miner thing or A Miner thing is quite big. It has about 2 million um, items, and items means in this case papers, and users are the authors. It is like 1 million users. So it's quite large, and the other ones also are in the range of 100,000. So it's quite big, and the ages are also quite large, the number of ages rather. So this is basically the statistics of the data sets. So okay. So now the question is, what are the ground truths? So for Fake News Net, so because we are giving this influence code to each of these vertices, right? For Fake News Net, the ranking of users is based on the total number of followers. So we consider the ground truth to be the total number of followers. A ranking of tweets is based on the total number of favorites and retweets. In case of A Miner, the ranking of authors is based on the H index, and the ranking of papers is based on the number of citations. And how do we evaluate this thing with corresponding to the ground truth? So basically, we use the Spearman rank correlation coefficient R to assess the quality of the predicted ranking with the ground truth ranking. So what is the Spearman correlation coefficient? So it is basically the for between 2 variables. The Spearman correlation is basically the Pearson correlation coefficient between the corresponding ranked variable. So what is the rank variable? For example, so note that in case of a ranking, the absolute values are not important. It is the relative values that are important. So, for example, if you scale each of the values by the same factor, say alpha, the ranking remains the same. So, in case of ranking, what you really bother about is what is the relative position in the ranking. So in case of Spearman correlation coefficient, what you really care about is that between 2 variables, you see what is the peers there. So, for example, for one variable, maybe its position is since 3, and in the other thing it is 7. So it is the rank values which is matters, and not the absolute values. Their absolute values can be 25 and 33. That doesn't matter. What I do is the relative ordering. So now, if you see that if n is the number of items and Si1 and S1I and S2 are the ranks of the ith item in the 2 rankings, then all I really care is the difference between the two ranks, and the Spearman correlation coefficient is given by the following formula, okay, which is given there. Now note that this R lies between -1 and +1, where 1 means a perfect agreement and -1 means a perfect disagreement, and 0 means there is no correlation between those two rankings. Now, when we do these experiments with all the existing baselines as well as VRank and GRank, we found that this is for the ranking of users. We found that VRank and GRank typically perform much better than the other ranking algorithms. As you can see, the bold is the best in that particular column. Sometimes VRank performs best and sometimes GRank performs best, but they always perform better than most of the other algorithms, and sometimes by a very large margin. You can see this 0.6647 versus these are like sometimes negative or even this thing. And similarly for the items, you can see that they are perform better. Although for items, you see the scores values are lower compared to the users. Maybe for VRank and GRank, but still it is better than the corresponding existing baselines. So to conclude the talk, here is let me summarize this what we have done. So we designed and implemented a new algorithm to compute the importance of users and posts in heterogeneous n-per-type networks, and it's a very general framework. Though I have told this as an online social network, it is actually graph ranking. It is a ranking framework for any arbitrary graphs. So it ranks vertices using the mutual reinforcement of their influences it is theoretically guaranteed to converge to a stationary solutions, as is shown by those theorems. It can be interpreted using a regularization framework as well as a Bayesian framework. So it has also different kind of interpretation, which gives new insights and sheds new lights on the algorithm. We tested it also on several real-world social network datasets. The interesting things is that there is a very interesting interplay of, you can see, graph algorithms, linear algebra, optimization, probabilistic graphical models, and so on, which is very nice. For one problem, you have seen different kind of branches of mathematics and computer science playing roles here, which I find very interesting. And also, we did extensive experiments on real data sets and to demonstrate the effectiveness, efficiency, and fast convergence of our method. So here are some future research directions. So we would like to use VRANK or a variation of that to predict the future popularity of users and posts. We'd like to learn how to optimally learn these hyperparameters of VRANKs, for example, alpha, beta, and gamma. So right now we are setting them manually based on our own judgment and experience, but it will be good to also optimally learn this thing based on the data. The thing is, the next thing will be like, if we can, we tried it on online social networks and academic collaboration networks, but like Twitter and A-Miner. So we'd like to see how, if this can also be applied to a product recommendation in an online marketplace like Amazon and eBay. Also, these two questions are very important: determining the appropriate ground truth as well as design of an axiomatic framework for ranking in graph. So what we really like to do is that, look, here we have this H index for the number of citation, and these we took as the ground truth. But there is also some other metrics, right? Nobody says that those are the absolute ground truth there. So is there any way to find out what is the like this independent of the other metrics? So there is a appropriate ground truth. And also, can we design an axiomatic framework for ranking in graphs, which will be like, suppose given two ranking functions, and there is some property in the graph, for example, node is deleted or added, what will be the effect of the ranking? So can we postulate a set of axioms and then show that under those axioms, this particular algorithm or the ranking algorithm is better than the other one under those particular axioms? So that is one thing that is definitely on my agenda. I'm trying to study that. Also, we want to extend our algorithms for dynamic graphs, where because in a real setting, these nodes and vertices and edges will be coming, right? So initially there may be only one vertex, and then the graph will grow, right? The new vertices will come and new edges will come, will join them, right? So of course we can compute the VRANK from scratch, but the question is, can we suppose there is a at the time t you have a vertex graph GT, and then another vertex is added, and you have GT plus 1 is equal to GT union V. Say, then can we incrementally compute, suppose given the VRANK for GT, can we compute the VRANK for GT plus 1 from the VRANK of GT, but not studying it from scratch, so in an incremental manner? So that will be very good for efficient thing. And that's all. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask. So this is a picture of Paul Erdos holding the what is known as the book, where he thinks that all the greatest proof in mathematics, the most beautiful and elegant proofs are being written by God in that book. And this is a pictorial illustration of Paul Erdos. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, thanks, Arindam. Thanks for a very nice and intuitive talk. I kind of asked my questions before, so I would open it to the audience for questions.
Hello. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, Pritam. Please go ahead.
Hi, Arindam. Yeah, very interesting talk. Very, as you said, I mean, very nice mixture of real application and the underlying mathematics on this linear algebra probability. So regarding the future directions, I would like to know a little more about exactly what you have in mind for that axiomatic thing of ranking. For ranking in graph.
So basically, so here is something I have in mind. I mean, I have not yet fully thought about that. So suppose think about that. Suppose, so you have a graph, okay, and then you have some vertex, and so maybe you have to ask the questions. Suppose if I if I add a vertex to that graph, then suppose you have a one ranking there on G. Okay, so suppose you have a ranking function R on G, and it assigns rankings, so R v1, R v2, like R vn. Okay, so they're anything. Now suppose I add another vertex vn plus 1. Suppose you have the new vertex G prime, which is G union v n plus 1. Now the question is that what effect will it have on the ranking function R? So now suppose there was earlier this ranking function R, which is giving R v1, v2, vn. Now you have, say, R prime v1, v2, vn plus 1. Now question, due to the addition of vn plus 1, what effect it will have on the existing ranking? Some of them may be same, some of them may be different, but what is the so for example, if I can understand if V is, there is no edges from, say, some vertex to this particular vertex, or some vertex to this particular vertex, or if there is no path even, so then the ranking should not change if I add a particular vertex, right? So can we formulate this in axiomatic manner? Similarly for edges also. Suppose if I have an edge on that thing, and then that particular edge is not not incident on this vertex, so that addition of that edge should not change on that thing, right? So can we formulate these kind of things in an axiomatic manner?
I see.
And
Okay.
also maybe for the base cases, can we say that, so if we have some special types of graphs, then the ranking value should be this. So it is, you can think of like maybe in the way we think about mathematical induction, right? So you have base cases. So here are some base cases type of graph, and say for all ranking function maybe. So for example, suppose the case of there is only a single vertex, and the single vertex, the ranking should be then probably it will get all the ranking, right? It should get 1. Now there may be a graph with 2 vertices, only one edge, right? So and directed edge, maybe this one will not get any value, it will get 0, and this will only get 1, because the influence only propagating from v1 to v2. There is a directed edge only, right? So these are the kind of the base cases of the rank, and any ranking algorithm should give them that value, right? And monotonicity property, for example, if for a given G1 and G2, maybe the ranking on G1 for a vertex B, the ranking on G1 should be greater than or equal to ranking on G2 if there is a certain property between that thing. So monotonicity property. So these kind of things, I want to develop an axiomatic framework for that.
Okay. One other question. So this regarding the hyperparameters, I'm just curious, like for the experimental data you showed, what was the relative weightage between like beta and gamma? Like how much influence you are taking from other items and how much from other users, or is it also dependent on the actual graphs? Like you tweaked them specific to each of those different types of graphs you showed?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Now that exactly depends on, let me go through that particular slide. So just a minute. Yeah, so now that really depends on, again, that really depends on how much importance you want to give to your prior beliefs, in this case uy naught and bj naught, and how much you want to give importance to each of these codes, right? So if you set say if you give higher values of beta and gamma and alpha and lower values, then you will get for 1 minus alpha and 1 minus beta minus, you will lower values, right? Now by just looking at a graph, because this is a very complex influence propagation, right? I cannot really say that by looking at the thing that what will be exactly the value, or even whether I should give high values to beta or gamma or low values to alpha, like that, right? So again, it depends on your, maybe you have some intuition. For example, if you have, say, maybe a graph which has like a star kind of configuration, then you may want to say that probably I'll give more values to alpha, or things that, if you have some intuition, right? But then again, in a complex graph which has like 100,000 nodes, you cannot even like visualize that structure, right? So we kind of experimented with some different values of beta, alpha, beta, and gamma. We really, at least for that particular thing, and for large graph, we really don't have any principled way of finding out what values we should assign these hyperparameters. So it would be good if we can, there is a like a principle and deterministic way of finding out how to assign these values. For example, if you look at Google, Google's PageRank algorithm, they said this, they have alpha value. They said typically say 0.85 to be good. So because it's like by experimentation they have found out, but there is no principled way to find out why it should be good for a given data set, right? So it may be possible that for another data set, maybe 0.8 is good, or another data set, maybe 0.9 is good, right? But they say that is a recommended value of 0.85.
I mean, Arindam, I would imagine probably I'm wrong, but the way it looks like, because your beta, gamma as alphas are not really dependent on the indices, right? And these are just hyperparameters. I mean, it would be really difficult to find a theoretical bound for beta and gamma, given that you already have bound all of these values between 0 and 1.
No, I'm saying that not theoretical thing. See, I mean, the algorithm converges, every property is independent of whatever alpha, beta, gamma measure. I'm not saying any theoretical thing. I'm saying that is there any principled approach to find out, maybe given a data set, is there any algorithmic way of finding out how to set some value, because in a data dependent way.
Okay.
So I'm not saying any theorem or any such thing. I'm saying that is there any way? So right now what we have to do? Okay, maybe I said alpha 0.1, alpha 0.2, alpha 0.3, and let's see how it goes. Right? I don't really have any way of finding out what could have given the good value which will ultimately improve the Spearman correlation coefficient. So I really don't know.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess there are no other questions. And please also share the paper with us once it gets published. I mean,
sure, I'll do that.
I mean, not now, obviously. Right? Yeah, it's a very nice work. Typically, what really happens is when you listen to someone else, I mean, first 15-20 minutes you follow, and then you actually get lost. But at least in your talk, that didn't happen. I could actually follow most of the stuff. Thank you very much for a very nice talk, and we deeply appreciate it, particularly at an odd time, of yours. So thank you very much. We'll be in touch. Please visit us in Goa whenever there is this, normal situation is restored. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Snehanshu. Thank you for inviting me. And also, I always try to it's very important for me to give a conceptual understanding of this thing. It's not just about a lot of math or very technical stuff, but I want to give the intuition and the pedagogical aspect of that. That is very important for me. So I always try so that my people who are listening, they understand this thing. So that has always been my conscious effort.
I actually have a different kind of a network. It is, you can say it's a cytometric network, but the network is not built on citations.
Okay.
It is built on people, it's built on authors, and it's built on some references. Okay. So I'm very close to finishing up the data set.
Okay.
And there is a model, of course. Okay. I would like to see how VRank performs on that particular data set. So I'll share the data with you. I can send you the data set. It's not really typical citations or H indices.
Okay.
So it's based on something else. I mean, the measure of influence is based on something else.
Okay.
So I'll share. I mean, I have a preliminary version of the paper which is already up on a preprint server. I'll share the paper with you. Okay, and then I'll share the complete data set in a couple of weeks. And then if you can run it, run VRank on it, and we'll see. What sort of node importance it assigns.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, please send me an email, then we can take it forward.
Yeah. I'll do that. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm stopping the recording.
Yeah. Thank you everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
You have a good night, Arindam.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arindam.
Bye.
Bye, Arindam.
Bye.
Thank you.